Thank you very, very much. My apologies that we're beginning just a couple of minutes late, and we're delighted to welcome everybody here. Let me just say at the outset, I had the chance to speak here earlier today on civil society, but I want to reemphasize the degree to which President Obama and the whole administration are genuinely very excited about these several days. This summit has been long in the making. It is an historic gathering, and we want it to be as substantive, as productive, in the end, as agenda-driving as possible. And in the end, of course, that will depend on all of you and the participation of the next days. But I want to begin by thanking all of their excellencies who are here, presidents and prime ministers, foreign ministers, others representing more than 50 countries. Mostly, I would say to you, heads of state, but for a few who are unable to make it for a number of reasons. We are distinctly pleased to be able to welcome you here to one of the signature events, really, of these next 3 days. And it's on a topic that means a great deal to many of us on a personal level in the administration. I know John Podesta, who will be taking part momentarily, Raj Shah, and others who are deeply, viscerally connected to this issue and all that it entails. But it also affects every person on earth in very real ways. Climate change, food security, and resilience are interrelated challenges that we all need to be thinking about as we plan for the future. And I'm delighted that so many of you are here to think about this and to sort of take idea from laboratory to shelf, and in some cases augment what is already on the shelf. So let me start by thanking all of the remarkable leaders who have agreed to serve on the panels coming up. Each of them are true leaders in their sectors or their countries, and you will judge that for yourselves. But particularly, we are grateful to several heads of state and the African Union chairperson, ourselves, leaders from the private sector, in addition, from the nonprofit world, all of the partners that we really need if we're going to be able to achieve what we want to achieve and to get this right. I want to especially thank the two moderators of the panel, the administrator of USAID, Raj Shah, who I've already mentioned, and John Podesta, likewise. Finally, thank you to the Second Lady of the United States, Jill Biden, who will join us here a little later to share some of her thoughts. When you talk about food security, it doesn't take very long to have the name Norman Borlaug come up. Norman would have been 100 years old this year. And he dedicated his entire life and career to feeding the world's hungry. He won a Nobel Prize for his work, and he pursued that path for one reason. As he put it, you can't build a peaceful world on empty stomachs and human misery. Pretty simple. It's been 5 years since Norman passed away, and you don't have to be a Nobel laureate to understand that the statistics around hunger today are nowhere near what he hoped for. Every day, 8,000 children die because they don't have enough to eat. They don't have a healthy, nutritious diet. 8,000 children every single day. Around the world, 1 in 8 people suffers from chronic hunger. And in sub-Saharan Africa, that number, regrettably, is 1 in 4. So looking to the future, it's only going to become more difficult to bring these numbers down if you look at the realities of what is happening. For one thing, over the next several decades, the population of Earth is expected to grow, and it's expected to grow quickly. The 7 billion people that we're focused on feeding today is going to become more than 9 billion people by 2050, 35 years. And more than half of this population growth, I would add, is expected to occur in Africa. But on top of that, the growing impacts of climate change are going to put extraordinary stress on our ability to be able to produce the amount of food that we need to be able to feed those increasing numbers. And I might add, to feed from increasing numbers from agricultural locations that are increasingly under greater stress and duress. Now, one thing to understand here this afternoon, we're not talking about some distant future. We're not talking about some pie-in-the-sky, unproven set of theories as they were in the earliest days of population growth or other challenges that we face. The impacts of climate change are already being felt everywhere in the world, from the Arctic to the Antarctic and everywhere in between and around. And they're only going to get worse unless we are successful next year in President Obama's and many other leaders' goal to go to Paris and get a global agreement with respect to the reduction of greenhouse gases. All you have to do is look at the extreme conditions that farmers are dealing with around the world. Hotter temperatures, longer droughts. Just look at California for our instance and other parts of the world. Unpredictable rainfall patterns. I just came from Delhi, where they're having torrential rains in some parts, way above the area levels they've ever had, and India as a whole, 25% below their average. Intense wildfires, and you can run the list. I'm not going to run it today. But there's a legitimate question that has to be asked, which is how do livestock thrive or even survive under those conditions? What happens if the great rivers of the Himalayas that literally are the life source for so many billions of people on both sides begin to be diverted and dry up because the glaciers are disappearing and the snow levels change? All you have to do is look at our ocean. The same carbon pollution that drives climate change is literally changing the ocean's chemistry. And we just had 2 days of a major conference in the State Department on the subject of the oceans. That is making it more and more difficult for species like clams and mussels to exist in its waters. Crustacea, all crustacea, are affected by increased acidity. Between ocean acidification, overpollution, excessive pollution, and overfishing, the three great challenges of the ocean, our fish stocks are in serious trouble in almost every fishery of the world. And what will that mean for the 3 billion people who today exist on seafood as their major source of protein? In some African countries, the importance of fish to nutrition and to their economies is particularly high. In Sierra Leone, 70% of the animal protein people absorb comes from fish. In Ghana, it's 51%. In Gambia, it's 49%. So what will people do if those fish stocks change because the ecosystem itself begins to collapse? But the intersection between climate change and food is not just about quantity. We're now seeing that carbon pollution is also making some of the food that we do grow less nutritious than it used to be. For example, rising carbon dioxide levels translate into lower levels of zinc and iron in wheat and other cereal grains. This means that people not only struggle to have enough food to eat, they may also suffer from a so-called hidden hunger. They're eating, but they're still deficient in certain micronutrients that keep them healthy. President Obama has made clear how committed he is to cutting carbon pollution and reducing emissions, and this administration has taken unprecedented unilateral administrative steps in order to try to keep faith with those promises. But we also have to make sure that we are asking ourselves, on top of our efforts to deal with the causes of climate change, how do we help ensure that farmers, fishermen, and the billions who depend on the food that they produce are able to endure the climate impacts that are already being felt, let alone yet to come? The answer is clear. By focusing our efforts on the intersection of climate and food security, by adopting creative solutions that increase food production and build resilience to climate change, all the while cutting greenhouse gases. That's how you do it. And now another part of this story is that certain agricultural processes can actually release carbon pollution and help contribute to the problem in the first place. It's a twisted circle, always complicated. But we also know there are ways to change that. For example, rather than convert natural areas to new farmland, a process that typically releases significant amounts of carbon pollution, we can instead concentrate our efforts on making existing farmlands more productive. Now, this is an area where African leaders have actually been ahead and significantly ahead of the game for some time. More than a decade ago, the AU launched the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, which requires all member states that sign on to create and implement national effective food security investment plans. These national plans are by nature created to cater to each country's specific needs, abilities, and limitations. And they're actually the basis for the work that we do with African nations through various joint initiatives that we're currently engaged in. This year, the AU went even further, not only by naming 2014 the Year of Agriculture and Food Security, but also by launching the Malabo Declaration. This declaration requires all signatories to pursue investments that protect people and ecosystems, and each of these countries have signed on to an agreement to ensure that over the next decade or so, at least 30% of all African farm, pastoral, and fisher households should be resistant to climate and weather-related shocks. Now, these are challenges that have frankly been on the top of President Obama's agenda since he first came into office. I know that they were there the day that I sat down with him to discuss becoming Secretary of State, and he told me that food security was one of those looming issues that he really wanted to make a difference on and address. And he's proven as much by spearheading a number of initiatives in order to do just that. Feed the Future, his signature initiative, is supporting farmers in 19 different countries, including 12 in Africa, by investing in various ways to make the food that they farm more plentiful, more accessible, and more nutritious. Another important initiative that President Obama launched is the New Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition. At the 2012 G8 summit at Camp David, several African heads of state, corporate leaders, and G8 members pledged to help raise 50 million people out of poverty in Africa by 2022 by increasing private investment in agriculture. After 2 years, the New Alliance now includes 10 African countries, 180 African and international companies, and it has leveraged $8 billion in planned private investment in agriculture. Commitment to this partnership is strong, and we are looking forward to announcing more updates throughout this week. These initiatives are actually really making a difference, my friends. But in light of the enormity of this challenge, they are not going to be enough by themselves. We need more governments, more businesses, more research institutions, more civil society, more people all over the world focused on improving agricultural productivity, on investing in innovation and technology like seeds that withstand drought and floods, and on ensuring the world's agricultural sector is operating as sustainably as possible. That is the idea behind the Global Alliance for Climate-Smart Agriculture. Now, I know that governments and other partners around the world are still in the process of deciding exactly what this alliance is all about. What's it going to look like? But I encourage all to get on board, particularly countries and organizations represented here at the African Leaders Summit. This is a priority for UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who will hope to formally launch this initiative at the Climate Summit in New York this September. And today I'm happy to announce that the United States intends to formally sign on. I know that several other African countries here are prepared to make similar announcements, and we are working together to produce a declaration announcing our mutual intent to join this effort. Let me add that we are planning to leave this document open until the end of this Leaders Summit, and we invite as many other leaders as possible to join us in committing to the Global Alliance for Climate-Smart Agriculture. So obviously, we have to continue to foster efforts like this. This is a gigantic initiative. And all of us who have had the privilege of traveling somewhere in the world, almost anywhere, have seen too many pockets of poverty, including right here in the United States. Too many people still struggling, too many kids going to bed at night hungry, and perhaps in some cases never waking up to see the next day. We also have to continue to innovate, and we have to, above all, cooperate. That's how we're all going to help end hunger and malnutrition and cut carbon pollution and improve the resilience of our farms, our forests, our fisheries. And if we do that, we will live up to our responsibilities for the future that help empower another generation that follow to do the same. Now, I think that all of us know what Norman Borlaug believed is absolutely true. Whether you're talking about countries in Africa or right here in North America, when people don't have to worry about where their next meal will come from, they have a greater ability to fulfill their dreams and become constructive, contributing citizens of the world. Like so many of the global issues that we deal with, what we have here is a question of political will. We have solutions, but none of these solutions will implement themselves. The will of governments, of companies, of civil society, of research institutes, and international organizations, all of these are the key. We know the challenges. We know what it's going to take to address them. It's a matter of all sectors coming together, applying their energies and efforts to make sure that we make the right decisions, the right commitments, so that millions of families living in poverty, really an anachronism. It's so contrary to everything that's possible when we look at the affluence in so many parts of the world. We can change this. We can set goals and we can pledge money, but unless people's lives have improved, unless we buy into the realities of what's staring us in the face in terms of better agriculture and better food production, the better distribution, we will fail. So that is exactly what this portion of the African Leaders Summit is all about. And let's get started. We have a terrific panel. It's my pleasure to turn it over to my friend and my colleague and a great advocate for this, a passionate advocate for this, the Administrator of USAID, Raj Shah. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Secretary Kerry, for that outstanding and exciting opening of this Food Security, Resilience, and Climate event at the President's African Leaders Summit. We're, of course, very enthusiastic to have the opportunity to be with leaders from across the United States, across Africa, experts in agriculture and climate change, and a team of people who have been working together for years to really ensure we tackle the dual challenges of preventing climate change from wiping out our gains and continuing to fight hunger and extreme poverty where it is far too prevalent. And I am thrilled that Secretary Kerry has lent his tremendous leadership to this topic, not just as Secretary of State, but during his long tenure in the United States Senate. And of course, we all know that the passion and commitment to this subject comes from President Obama himself, who in his inaugural address, his first inaugural address, made the bold claim that we would help small-scale farmers, primarily women, all around the world. And in just February of his first year in office, launched the L'Aquila Initiative at his first G20 to raise resources and political commitment around the world to tackle hunger, create climate-smart agricultural opportunities, and build greater resilience around our planet. I am so excited to be here today with outstanding leaders who have been fighting this fight and succeeding in Africa and the United States. Prime Minister Hailemariam of Ethiopia needs no introduction to you, but he has positioned Ethiopia at the cutting edge of agricultural development, a founding member of the New Alliance for Food Security, and really a model for both rapid reductions in child death and parallel increases in agricultural productivity. Thank you, Prime Minister, for being with us. Representative Betty McCollum is a Democrat from Minnesota, is leading the charge in Congress on a bipartisan basis to help institutionalize initiatives like Feed the Future and ensure that our commitment to tackling hunger and extreme poverty remains a major and central part of American foreign policy for years and decades to come. Thank you, Betty, for joining us. And Madam Zuma, the chairperson of the African Union, a leader in her on a range of issues, probably the most passionate and effective and strongest advocate on behalf of women and girls in the context of African development. We are so proud to associate this effort with your leadership, and we recognize the very central and important role you have been playing to ensure that food security remains at the top of the agenda in Africa and around the world. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to start with a question for the Prime Minister. We have had the chance to work together for years, and you have recently joined 50 other heads of state to commit to a new set of ambitious goals, the declaration that Secretary Kerry just made reference to. Could you talk about why these goals are important and what you believe they will mean for Ethiopia as you look forward to a day when you've wiped out hunger and protected vulnerable communities because of the strength and resilience of your economy?
Thank you very much, Raj. First of all, I'd like to thank you for a very important gathering today, simply because African Union has launched a year celebration on agriculture and food security this 2014. And I think we have come to Malabo simply because we have launched 10 years ago a program called Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, which is an instrument for the last 10 years. We have gone through this program, and each one of us has commitment to this program to modernize our agricultural system in Africa. And in this regard, we evaluated in Malabo the progress we have made in comprehensive agricultural, African agricultural program. And in that evaluation, we came to know that agriculture remains to be, again, the source of an engine of growth for Africa. And, the livelihood of many Africans is based on agricultural produce. And we should focus on agriculture time again for the future of the coming 10 years as well. But we have challenges. In many African countries now, the climate change has created lots of complications in productivity increment. And, the production has declined because of the climate change. And the agricultural share of our GDP in some countries has gone down to 4% or so. So this shows that we have to take care of the climate change issue as an African leaders and African governments at this time seriously, so that we can combat the climate change issue properly. So we introduced now in our next step in the program that climate smart agricultural production system should be the basis for the future program we have launched in Africa. So I think the African leaders has come to understand the severity of climate change and its impact much more than ever now in this summit. And therefore we have to continue on to pursue and be more committed to actionable programs in each one of our countries. And therefore, this is high time for us, the African leaders, to commit ourselves to have a concrete and measurable targets for the coming 10 years. So that was the basis why we African leaders need to work very hard to combat the climate change issues. It is possible. We are, as responsible global citizens, even though our contribution is insignificant as far as the global greenhouse gas emission is concerned, but we need to focus on our own way to show that we have moral responsibility for this globe, as Secretary Kerry said. Now it is, it's high time that things are not just theoretical, but happening now in every corner of the globe. So we need to have responsibility, a moral responsibility, to discharge our own responsibility in Africa.
Well, Prime Minister, we're so proud of our partnership with Ethiopia. You have, in the last few years, protected 7 million children from requiring food assistance when the rains didn't come in 2011. You've had these big yield improvements. And as you point out, if the high-end IPCC estimates take place, you could have a 20 to 30% reduction in yields. And so your focus on behalf of the continent on climate-smart agriculture is an area where we intend to continue to be good partners, bringing American research and partnership to that task. Madam Zuma, you have, in addition to focusing on the Malabo Declaration, you have also made the point that it is women who power African farms. It's women who provide most of the labor, and we know that income gains that go to women are far more likely to reduce malnutrition, increase school attendance, and create a pathway out of poverty for communities. Could you share your impressions of our partnerships in food security and your assessment of the Malabo Declaration?
Thank you. I think you are very correct that women are the ones who, at the moment, power agriculture. But as one of the leaders in the African continent in that debate in Malabo said that people say hard work pays. But if women, African women, were paid for their hard work in agriculture, they would be billionaires.
That'd be nice.
But we need to ask ourselves and to help the women, why are they not billionaires with such hard work? Of course, before I get to that, let me share with you some thoughts that women had just before the Malabo, in Malabo actually, just before the summit, because they wanted to make an input into that summit themselves. And one of the things they said was they really want agriculture to be modernized. They said, at the moment, the symbol of agriculture in Africa is probably a woman holding a hoe, handheld hoe, sometimes with a child on her back. And they said, I must tell the leaders and the partners that that must stop. They want that handheld hoe in the museum. Which means they want to have access to modern implements so that they can improve the productivity. They also want access to more land, which partners can't do, but leaders can give them access to more land. Thirdly, they would like to have access to capital, which partners can do, but also we can, as part of Malabo, there was a discussion about asking our banks to ensure that 30% of their agricultural lending goes to women. And I think that's what in every country we have to try and do. But again, women must be made to be farmers, not just subsistent farmers. And I think the partnership between yourselves and others and the governments must allow women to move from being just planting for the food at the home at the time, but to be farmers. But to go beyond that, to also be part of agro-processing. But I think what is important for the partners and our leaders is to ensure that we are able to attract young people into agriculture. Because if we don't attract young people into agriculture, before we know, there'll be nobody in agriculture. So it's very important that we do smart agriculture so that young people can come in and see this not only as hard work, but as a business that can give them a decent living. But we also have to look at agriculture as a way of investing in people. We are saying in the AU through our Agenda 2063 that our first priority is to invest in our most precious resource. And our most precious resource is our people. Health, education, but if they don't have food,
We can't succeed.
it's not going to help. So agriculture has those multi-dimensions. As a doctor, you actually know that the difference between life and death of a child that gets an infection is whether it's well-nourished or malnourished. But it doesn't end there. You know that if a child is not properly nourished, they will not reach their full potential mentally, besides physically. So agriculture is important for the well-being of the person, for the business side. And of course, Africa still has a lot of arable land. And if we use that arable land well, we can be able to be self-sufficient. And that's what our leaders were declaring. And then we can also feed the world, but we need to process also what we produce. Because if we don't process what we produce, we export raw, but we export the jobs as well that should be remaining on the continent and being accessible to young people. But when you export raw cotton, you export that raw cotton with the jobs that it creates in its processing. So
We need those jobs in Africa.
yes.
And we have seen through your leadership that the AU declarations are followed by countries like Ethiopia increasing their domestic investment in agriculture, knowing that agricultural investment is 3 to 4 times more likely to reduce poverty and provide women opportunities than other forms of GDP growth. So thank you for your leadership.
But lastly, we need skills, scientists who are going to innovate and make sure that we have climate smart agriculture, new implements. So we need that, not only to grow, but to grow the skills as well.
Your story about the hoe in the museum reminded me of President Obama was in Senegal last year with President Sall and had the chance to visit with a farmer named Nimna, who told him a story how she used to have a hoe and she used to work the field herself. She became part of the Feed the Future effort, and she showed him pictures of her tractor and mobile phone, which was how she was running her multi-farm enterprise at the time. Congresswoman McCollum, you are leading the charge in Congress to institutionalize this focus on climate-smart agriculture, and you have done an extraordinary job of bringing businesses and faith institutions and Republicans and Democrats together. Sometimes it seems it's hard in this town to bring everyone together around a particular idea. What is your experience on behalf of the President's food security vision?
Well, it's an honor to be here with my brothers and sisters, and your leadership on this, Doctor, has been outstanding, and I'm so proud of President Obama. Working in partnership, true partnership, because I have had the opportunity to travel in Africa a lot, and Africa knows what Africa needs. It just needs a good partner. And so the Feed the Future initiative, which is the focus of my legislation that I'm working on with members from the Republican side of the aisle, the administration, and as the administrator pointed out, is a public-private partnership here to work in partnership publicly and privately in Africa as well, is for doing just what you were describing, with a strong focus on women, because I've been out in the fields in Malawi with the women just before the rains came, and it is women, often they had children on their backs. I got to watch the children because they didn't trust me with the planting. And I'm from a farm state, but it was really, really interesting. The women knew what they needed. They just needed the partnership in getting it there. And your point about health and what Secretary Kerry said about education, what really convinced me that Feed the Future needs to be one of the top U.S. foreign policy tools in our toolbox for partnership is when I was going around, when I was just elected on PEPFAR, I had the opportunity of being in Tanzania and witnessing something that still haunts me to today. There were two women, they literally lived across the street from one another in Dar es Salaam. One had a family network and support, and she had access to food and nutrition, and she had enough weight on her to start taking ARVs. A woman right across the street from her had an 8-year-old boy who was doing the best he could through what we call panhandling, begging, to bring home a little nutrition for himself and his mother. She was not going to make it to receive ARVs, and that child was going to become an orphan. And I realized we need a whole-of-government approach, not only here in the United States in partnership with Africa, but Africa, as I heard, I was just at the health lunch, is developing its whole-of-government approach. So I know Feed the Future works. I've seen it firsthand. I know that the value added after we get the sustainability and the climate portion in partnership with Africa, the value added, which we call processing at home. We have many businesses in the United States who want to be a partner with Africa. So I'm so pleased to be here today and to be part of this outstanding panel. And it's good work that we do together. And I just want to close with this, because Feed the Future does focus on women farmers a little bit. I heard a lot of people talk about, the bread raisers, the bread earners. Well, women make the bread. We grow it and we bake it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And it's been great also to see the bipartisan support for this vision that has been fundamentally African-led. And I recognize our time is very short, but maybe I could ask Madam Zuma and Prime Minister to both offer a very quick final word. What word of advice do you have for American businesses, political leaders, cabinet secretaries, and scientists as we leave this session today and continue to commit ourselves to this partnership?
Well, thanks. I think they should believe in Africa. And secondly, I think Africa is a good partner. We know where we're going. As she has just said, we need good partners. And we think this partnership can grow even to higher heights. And we appreciate the partnership, but let's get it deep.
We will be there with you. Prime Minister.
Thank you so much. First of all, we have the commitment, but we have lack of capacity to discharge the commitment we have to make an actionable programs. And we need the support of United States government and people in terms of building our capacity to enhance our fight of climate change. But also to the private sector, I would like to say that Africa is having 60% of the global Arab where you can come and invest in Africa. And therefore, this partnership will help to produce, because in the coming 30 years, we'll be having 50% more demand for food crops. And in that sense, we need to invest now so that we can reach that demand in the future. So I just want business people to come and invest in Africa.
Well, we very much endorse that vision, and Secretary Kerry noted that tomorrow we'll be making some new announcements around the new Alliance for Food Security to demonstrate that American and African businesses continue to have more and more confidence in your leadership and in Africa's growth potential from an agricultural perspective. Thank you so very much for sharing your vision and your commitment and your very real success. And I'll close this panel on the final note that since President Obama made that commitment in his inaugural address, as a result of the bipartisan support for Feed the Future, today 12 million fewer children are hungry because of this combined partnership that you lead. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's now my privilege to introduce Dr. Jill Biden, who also needs no introduction in this room. As you know, she's our nation's second lady, an extraordinary educator, and one of the world's strongest champions for fighting hunger and extreme poverty. I'll just say I've had the chance now twice to travel with Dr. Biden, once to refugee camps during the tragic Somali famine in 2011, and more recently, just a few weeks ago in Zambia. And it just makes me so proud to see the way Dr. Biden ensures that we have a constant focus on serving the world's most vulnerable, and to see the way people respond to the genuine commitment of her leadership to really stand up for those who often don't have others to stand up for themselves. So thank you, and Dr. Jill Biden. Thank you so much for doing this.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here with all of you today. And thank you, Administrator Raj Shah, for leading such an important discussion. 3 years ago this month, I was home in Delaware when I saw news reports of the worst drought in 60 years in East Africa. I saw the terrible images of starving children in a refugee camp near the Somali border. As a mother, I was heartbroken, and I wanted to do anything I could do to help. I reached out to Raj, and 2 days later, he and I were on a plane headed for Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya, 50 miles from the Somali border. Hundreds of thousands of people had fled to the camp in hopes of finding salvation. Raj and I traveled with a bipartisan delegation to raise awareness for the humanitarian crisis and to provide support for the relief efforts. We met families who walked for days or weeks, often barefoot and with nothing but the clothes on their backs, desperate for food, water, and medical care to save their starving children. We heard an unforgettable story from one mother who told us that she was too weak to carry both of her children, that she had to choose between them, and she left one behind on the road in hopes of saving the other. Take a moment. Try to imagine the type of devastation and desperation that would force a mother to make that choice. In the hour of need, the American people stepped up. The international community mobilized to provide assistance, and we saw how even the smallest and simplest investment helped to save lives. We saw inexpensive oral rehydration packs bring lifeless babies back to life. We saw children getting vitamins and vaccines to stop the spread of deadly diseases throughout the camps. Still, it's important to keep in mind that emergency assistance cannot solve long-term challenges around food insecurity. African nations have made impressive progress in farming techniques and growing food, but through no fault of their own, when hit by the worst drought in 60 years, millions of people were plunged into a famine. And the impact of climate change will only cause more devastation for those communities in the immediate future. That's why the United States is working to look at the root causes of hunger and poverty through our Feed the Future initiative. While in Kenya, I saw firsthand the progress that was being made from investments in long-term food security, innovative and improved crops and irrigation methods, and new ways for farmers to market and transport their products. The goal is simple: to create the conditions where emergency assistance and intervention is no longer needed. That, ultimately, is how we will prevent the kind of suffering that Raj and I saw in Somalia 3 years ago. So today, I'm pleased to announce that the United States government, through several of our outstanding training programs with U.S. universities and others, will be providing scholarships for long-term degree programs for 1,300 young Africans, many of them women, to become Africa's leaders of tomorrow. One of the challenges that these young leaders will continue to face is how to build a more resilient Africa, where vulnerable populations and regions have the tools they need to face climate, economic, and other challenges. I'm now very pleased to invite back Administrator Shah, together with Judith Rodin, President of the Rockefeller Foundation, with some important news on addressing resilience. Thank you. God bless you.
Well, Dr. Rodin, we have a unique opportunity hearing Dr. Biden's comments to try to take a different approach. You and I were talking a few years ago about how we spend, as a global community, about $40 billion a year on humanitarian assistance in camps like the one Dr. Biden and I had a chance to visit. And about 90% of that spending, year after year, to the same individuals in the same communities for the same purpose. And you have, through your extraordinary leadership as president of the Rockefeller Foundation, helped construct a vision for doing things differently. Not just around the world, but primarily in New York City after Sandy, and in our own country, in mega cities in Asia, really helping to prepare communities so that when disasters strike, disasters that we know are coming, they don't suffer the dire consequences or need the immediate humanitarian assistance because they can be standing on their own 2 feet. Could you please tell us about that work and your thoughts going forward?
I will, and thank you so much, Administrator Shah. It's wonderful, an honor to be here. Your leadership not only put resilience front and center in USAID's development efforts, but it's really paved the way for resilience to move to the forefront of the development agenda. This isn't the first time that Dr. Shah and I have collaborated with lofty goals. In 2006, when Raj was leading the Gates Foundation's work on agriculture, Rockefeller and Gates pioneered the launch of the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, known as AGRA. AGRA's dual role is to reduce both challenges of hunger and poverty by sparking a third green revolution, this time in Africa. It did my heart good to hear John Kerry mention Norman Borlaug, of course, our beloved Rockefeller Foundation program officer who launched that work in Latin America and South Asia. So it's only fitting, I think, that we really make this announcement of our next collaboration impacting Africa in between panels on food security and partnerships. Secretary Kerry really laid out forcefully, as did Dr. Biden, the need for resilience-building strategies. And there are so many ways that USAID has really put front and center in many of its programs already the promise of resilience for building development needs. Dr. Shah kindly mentioned Rockefeller's initiatives here. We were active in post-Katrina rebuilding in New Orleans, and it's really there that we recognize the need for cities worldwide to plan for and protect themselves against the shocks and stresses that were coming with increasing frequency and will continue to come with increasing frequency. We launched the Asian Cities Climate Change Resilience Network, now working in 50 vulnerable cities. And we launched, of course, last year, the 100 Resilient Cities Challenge worldwide, which will create a network and a platform of services for building resilience in 100 cities around the world. While cities have been a special focus, obviously it would be impossible to work on agriculture without interventions that also thought about climate-smart agriculture. And there have been many innovations that we have helped to support. As Madam Zuma knows, one innovation we supported was the World Food Programme's Africa Risk View, a software program that translates satellite-based rainfall data into cost estimates of anticipated droughts or anticipated flooding for every first-level administrative district in every country in sub-Saharan Africa. This platform is now the technical engine of the AU's Africa Risk Capacity, which is an optimized risk management system that triggers timely provision of development disaster assistance, and when fully operationalized, will allow preventive measures to be implemented that actually will build resilience. So over 10 years, Rockefeller's committed more than $500 million to help cities and rural communities build greater economic, social, and climate resilience. So while USAID and Rockefeller perhaps may have come to resilience building through different work, we are driven by the same reality, one of the realities that brings us all here together. So much investment in development is made, and yet it's weakened or wiped out by shocks and stressors, both natural and man-made. Droughts, storms, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, civil unrest. As a result, huge expenditures in relief and humanitarian aid are often needed. Indeed, it is estimated by the World Bank that for every $3 spent on development, $1 is lost to disaster. Meanwhile, year after year, humanitarian aid continues to be directed to the same regions to address immediate recovery needs. Work by Rockefeller and USAID and many others in some of the most vulnerable places in the world shows one thing clearly to us, that building resilience reduces the likelihood that severe disruptions become disasters, enabling communities and institutions to rebound faster and more effectively. That means less money is required to be spent on disaster recovery and relief. Moreover, we've shown that the investments in resilience building can yield economic and social benefits for individuals and for communities before the shocks hit. Both of these together, the mitigation of disaster and the co-benefits of resilience building investments every day, make up what we call the resilience dividend. To achieve this resilience dividend for more people and more places, we need a new approach. An approach that effectively captures and aligns the strength of both humanitarian and development assistance. That is the impetus for what we are announcing today, the convening of a global resilience partnership with an initial investment by the Rockefeller Foundation and USAID of $100 million. This partnership will work to coordinate resources, to scale innovation, and to engage new actors in 3 geographies that are so highly vulnerable to shocks: the Sahel, the Horn of Africa, and South and Southeast Asia. The first feature of the Resilience Partnership will be the launch of a multi-phase resilience design challenge focused on bringing people and organizations from a diverse set of industries together to collaborate on bold and innovative solutions to the toughest resilience challenges facing each of these three regions. We will bring together multi-sector and multidisciplinary teams to develop viable, locally driven, high-impact solutions that can build resilience at scale. We anticipate opening this challenge this September. In each region, teams will become part of a regional hub comprised of innovators and experts to collaborate and bring new thinking and new ideas. A second feature of the partnership provides predictive analytic tools, very sophisticated tools for strengthened decision-making. This will include big data aggregation methods, crowdsourced data collection, new types of vulnerability and crisis mapping, and a set of early warning systems. Predictive modeling, for example, can generate compelling evidence, and it can catalyze financing towards building resilience dividends. A third feature of the partnership will include developing new streams of flexible financing to increase the support for innovative practices. One such product we are exploring is a resilience impact bond, which would pay for delivering improved resilience outcomes, or an expansion of new types of risk insurance, or even creating rapid microlending facilities. This is not to replace the good work underway by us and by others, but to catalyze innovation and finally to scale what is working. We seek a true partnership among civil society, other donors, governments, companies who are interested in infusing resilience thinking throughout global development investments to drive a paradigm shift, one that we can do together to build the resilience dividend. In USAID, the Rockefeller Foundation could not have asked for a better and more effective co-convener to spearhead this effort. We look forward to getting this off the ground. We look forward to working with so many of you in this room and engaging the leaders of so many countries, the leader of the African Union Commission, and we will have many more announcements about this partnership in the weeks to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Judith. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so very much. If that partnership leads to just a fewer children that have to experience what we saw in that camp outside of Somalia, it will have been extraordinarily successful. Thank you for your leadership, Judith. It's now my pleasure to introduce John Podesta, who will be introducing the next panel on partnerships. And I will say that John, you all know John because he was the chief of staff to President Clinton, a fixture in American democratic politics, the founder of the Center for American Progress, and now the president's senior counselor in the White House. He's probably most proud, I think I can say this, John, of two things. One is he was the United States representative to the high-level panel to construct the next Millennium Development Goals, and a strong and powerful advocate for making central to that effort the task of ending extreme poverty in a clear, measurable way. The second, which I think is actually his proudest accomplishment, he was recently featured on the cover of Runner's World for his prolific running habit. John Podesta.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you. Well, he definitely got the order right. So this panel, I think, is going to continue what has been a really exciting conversation on integration and partnership. I think it's fair to say that we'll be much more successful at promoting resilience and food security, developing modern agricultural systems and practices, and building stronger economies, and addressing both the causes and the impacts of climate change if we approach these issues in a holistic way, as opposed to tackling each challenge separately. And ultimately, success will only come through meaningful partnerships. Partnerships, I think, are an essential part of a new model of development and a key to driving faster and deeper change. This new model of development recognizes that there are many actors beyond governments, businesses, multilateral institutions, private investors, civil society groups, farmers, research institutes, private philanthropists, as we've heard this afternoon, that are already bringing to bear resources, commitments, and expertise to these challenges. The new model emphasizes the importance of partnering with and leveraging these other actors to maximize development outcomes. And I am happy to introduce an outstanding panel to share their experiences about the power of partnerships. We'll hear from His Excellency President Macky Sall of the Republic of Senegal, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack, DuPont Executive Vice President Jim Burrell, and Dr. Sifo Moyo, head of the One Campaign in Africa. So let me start with President Sall. Mr. President, Senegal has established partnerships with the private sector and civil society to advance food security, particularly through the new Alliance for Food Security. So let me just start with a big question. Why have you decided to focus on working with non-governmental stakeholders in this effort? Why is that important? And what's the success been so far?
First of all, I'd like to say how delighted I am by this opportunity you're providing us with. This is a very important debate devoted to agriculture resilience in a context of global climate change. Prior to go back to your question, in terms of climate change, I'd like to dwell on the consequences which are quite dire for most African countries, particularly for the Sahelian countries where Senegal is located, where I'm from, and talk about the efforts of both farmers and the government because of the cycle of flooding and drought. It's infernal beyond the deterioration of the soil via droughts, desertification. As you are aware, the Sahara Desert neighbors West Africa and Sahelian countries, and the effects are immediate on the soil. And on desertification, you have to link climate change. So this brings a new variation, a certain uncertainty in terms of African agriculture. A lot of efforts were done to modernize agriculture. The Rockefeller Foundation, the Secretary of State Kerry and Dr. Biden mentioned this. A lot of efforts were undertaken so as to modernize African agriculture, mechanization, increasing the yield based on selecting the right seeds. But all these efforts are reduced to naught because of erratic rainfall that is not well channeled. In the Sahel, we were supposed to have bumper crops, but all the seeds were reduced to nothing. So it's this lack of predictability makes us so very vulnerable facing climate change. Now, regarding the non-public sector, the private sector, our needs in terms of our investments are huge, enormous. The government alone, the public sector cannot alone yield the results that we're expecting. We said that 60% of arable lands for a continent of over 30 million square kilometers. This is huge resources that we have to manage. But the private sector must play a part, so we need a private-public partnership to exploit these lands, and you have to take into account the family farmer. Whilst modernizing, you should not kill traditional family farming. You need a combination of both. You need the traditional farmers, and I support Mrs. Zuma in terms of the role of women in African agriculture, but also the role and the place of youth, because agriculture is not exclusively the only sector that enables us to feed Africa, but it is the sector that provides the greatest amount of jobs. So you need a combination of these PPPs so that the governments, while availing lands via covenants that are balanced, should be able to attract the private sector. And I welcome AGOA, but things should be more visible in West Africa, where we have this water stress, these climate variations, and we are already on the right course. But to conclude, we have to develop irrigation. Irrigation, so as to better master the cycle of water and to be the masters of our agriculture. If we depend solely on rain, the rainfall, which is impacted by climate change, as you can see, the farmer at the end of the road is completely devastated. That are some of the topics that our governments, foundation, the private sector, must work globally in a global alliance.
DuPont is a member of the new alliance. You're not a philanthropic organization. You're in business to return value to your shareholders. Why does this new model of partnership with governments, donors, and especially, as the President noted, smallholder farmers make good sense for business sense for DuPont?
It does make good business sense. Let me start first by saying thank you to USAID for the opportunity to participate in the panel, and particularly for the continued partnership. We are delighted to be one of the first companies to respond to the new Alliance for Food Nutrition Security, and the aim there was to bring out innovations that can be improving ag productivity and be taken to scale. And as a result of that, we're partnering with the USAID and the government of Ethiopia around Advanced Maize Seed Adoption Program, which we launched a little more than a year ago. It's aimed at improving farmer productivity and incomes, and I can tell you after the first year, it's already yielding measurable impact. And so it's a pleasure to be with everybody today, because we see collaboration as a really key part of being able to be successful. Whether that's with other companies or with governments or NGOs or even just thought leaders, together we think we can find solutions to some of the big challenges. At DuPont, we're a science company. Science is kind of who we are. But we try to focus that global science on finding local solutions, because we know solutions really have to be local. We're encouraged by the progress and the growth in a number of African countries. But we also recognize that the situations are pretty dynamic, and it's going to take continued collaboration. Another aspect of what we do is that we think is important is sustainability, in the truest sense of the word, not just environmental sustainability, but economic and social sustainability. And that's much better done in collaboration with others who really who know the situation on the ground. And so, we're looking for ways to make sure that what we do is sustainable in the environment where we're operating, inclusive of the communities that they serve, embracing smallholder farmers as change agents, youth as tomorrow's the future of tomorrow's agriculture, women's empowerment to help be the engine of growth. All of those things are important, but they're better achieved by working together with others. And I might add that the work that USAID is doing in the Feed the Future program, I think, is aligned with all of those principles very strongly, and that's why we believe it is important for Congress to codify the Feed the Future into legislation. A number of NGOs and companies, including DuPont, support that. But we're making investments in agriculture in Africa, agriculture and nutrition, because it can yield high returns, not just as a business, but also in terms of food security and poverty eradication and sustainable development. In some ways, if we can get agricultural development moving, that's economic development. Economic development improves incomes and creates customers for the future. if we work together, we can find, I think, a virtuous cycle. We've been in Africa for over 50 years, and we're committed to continuing our investments in Africa. We place a pretty significant value on having local teams that are empowered to find local solutions where they could really make a difference. So collaboration has got to go to new levels in our view, and we're looking for ways to do that. Global food security isn't just an agricultural issue. We need the whole value chain to get engaged. It's another reason why another method maybe, if we can invite all the players in the value chain to get engaged, we think we can be more successful. And we know that at the end of the day, it's not any one company or NGO or government or foundation that can solve the challenges we have, but together we think we can. So.
Good. Tom, let me turn to you. You've been very involved in the creation of the Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture. As the Secretary noted, that'll be officially launched at the Secretary General's Climate Summit in New York next month. What do you hope to achieve in the Alliance, and what does the U.S. Department of Agriculture bring to this new partnership?
Well, John, I think there are three goals to the Alliance. First and foremost is to advance sustainable agricultural practices. Secondly is to create greater resiliency in agriculture. And finally, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions related to agriculture. And I think USDA has an integral role in partnership with countries, NGOs, and small farmholders in countries across Africa, and for that matter, across the world. In the area of sustainable agriculture, I think we have the opportunity to share research on everything from genomics to pest and disease control, strategies for adaptation and mitigation of the consequences of a changing climate. If we're really going to have a peaceful and more secure world, if we're really going to have economic development in Africa, we clearly have to have a more sustainable agricultural future for farmers in Africa. You know, in terms of resiliency, I think that there's an opportunity for us to share again what we've learned about drought. We've obviously been impacted by drought as well. We can monitor it, we can map it, we can predict it, we can determine how best to deal with the consequences of drought. We can implement new ways of water management. We can look at ways in which we can use drought-resistant crops, forage for livestock that is more drought resilient. All of that information can be shared, and through extension and through partnership and through fellowships, we can basically share our knowledge and embrace this notion of partnership. And in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, I think that there are some tools that we've developed at USDA that could be applied in farms all across Africa to better calculate the impact of certain agricultural practices on greenhouse emissions, and also to talk about conservation and the important role that conservation can play in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So whether it's Common Farm or GraceNet, things that folks can see on our website, there's a lot of opportunity here. And I would just simply summarize by suggesting that I think the United States has a unique opportunity and a unique responsibility of working closely in partnership. The reality is we are all in this together. We have a huge challenge in terms of global food security. It can be met only through partnerships.
One of the things you and I have been involved with is making more data available to create new tools, particularly domestically for the U.S. agricultural sector, to predict and create more resilient systems. How's that working globally? Is there a role to play for U.S. to particularly to put more data out?
Absolutely. The UK and the US basically announced last year the development of global open data for agriculture and nutrition effort. We now have 80 partners in that effort. It's NGOs, it's countries, it's universities. It's designed to provide more accessible, more available, and more usable data. We're happy to see that IBM and Kellogg have joined that effort recently. Ghana, as well as Senegal, have also joined that effort. We're looking forward tomorrow to an opportunity to work with IBM on an open data jam, an opportunity for folks to share best practices and information about how better to utilize the open data that's available. We'd also, as an extension of this, we're also working with countries across the globe on our Global Research Alliance, which is also designed to share information about how best practices in terms of crop production, animal production, and rice production in relationship to a changing climate. So it is critically important for us If we aren't sharing data, if we're not open and transparent about it, then obviously we're not going to get the full benefit of the data.
See, Paul, we've talked a little bit about government. We talked about the private sector. Let's talk about civil society. How are African civil society organizations in particular partnering with each other to raise your collective voice on issues like food security, resilience, climate change, and particularly in the context of the National Comprehensive Africa Agricultural and Development Programs?
Great. Thank you, John. And thanks to the U.S. government for inviting civil society to be here today. We really appreciate the opportunity. So I think my job today is to talk about how, to talk about our theory of change, essentially, and how advocacy helps to change, to influence policy while working together with other partners. And I'll talk about this in the context of a relevant campaign that we're actually just closing out today. It was the Do Agric campaign, which we did in Africa in support of the African Union's Year of Agriculture. And there's many levels of partnership involved in that campaign, but essentially that was the campaign that put pressure on African leaders to sign a strong Malabo Declaration. But basically, we're working in support of their Year of Agriculture. And this is how the partnership works. So different levels. So at first, we have policy champions who really, you identify the champions who already care about the issue. We worked very closely with President Kikwete, who in fact received the first petition ever. And then we worked very closely with President Yayi Boni, who was chairing the African Union Commission in 2012. And he was the one that declared that 2014 would be the Year of Agriculture. And then, most importantly, we work with other civil society partners. This is really important. That coalition is important. It's the coalition of the willing, if you like, just bringing together partners who believe in the same thing and agreeing on those issues. And with the partners, what we really did was to work together on a set of joint policy recommendations that were going to backstop the work that the leaders were doing. And I'm pleased to say that in declaring the Malabo Compact for Agriculture, the leaders actually took on 80% of the policy recommendations that we handed to them. Other levels of partnership, of course, is we're building awareness, and what we want, the important thing about a campaign like that is getting African citizens engaged, because this is about them. And we were able to bring 2.2 million young Africans to sign this petition that eventually went to the leaders at the African Union Summit. And in talking about partnerships, a really key aspects of partnership for us, there is always a co-factor. So we worked with African artists, because they're role models in society. Agriculture is a very difficult issue, and we needed to rebrand the image of agriculture. A lot of young Africans, when you talk to them about agriculture, all they can think of is their grandparents scratching the earth and staying poor. And, go talk to someone else. But being able to work with African artists who are really excited about this and seeing the light in agriculture, seeing agriculture for its potential, helped us to get 2 million young Africans to join this campaign and say to the African leaders, we want you to invest in agriculture. So it's so many levels. At the policy level, we were so fortunate to be able to work very closely also with the African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, who became one of the key policy champions for this agriculture. And ultimately, we produced a music video, which I think we're going to show at the end of this, and I'll ask everyone to dance. And it's called Coconut Chocolate. But that rebranding of agriculture was key to our success, to bring 2 million African citizens to the campaign. The partnership with other civil society organizations on the joint policy recommendations was key to getting the leaders to kind of, what we do really, and you can tell from the way I'm describing the campaign, we have a model. It's inside-outside campaigning. So we lobby the policymakers, the grass tops, if you like. We mobilize the grassroots to come to the campaign. We underpin it with smart policy work. So we did 2 major reports. One was an accountability report, which compares what the countries are doing, who's investing and who's more and who's investing less, and also get the best practices from the countries that are doing the most. And the other one was a report we did in partnership with the World Bank. It's called Leveling the Field. And that report was really key in identifying the constraints that women face in agriculture. In other words, the gender gap, which Mrs. Zuma spoke about earlier on. So this was really how we worked the campaign, brought it all together, and in the end, it was very successful because having leaders champion the campaign, just identifying a handful of leaders who really take this on as their campaign and can work with their friends and their colleagues and all of that was instrumental in getting really a unanimous, strong compact for agriculture a month ago when the leaders met in Malabo. So that's really the long and short of our campaign strategy and how we bring things together.
Well, we got a little bit squeezed for time, but I want to ask President Sall one last question, which is, as Raj noted, I served on the high-level panel, Ban Ki-moon's high-level panel on the post-2015 development goals. The Open Working Group just reported. And I wonder whether you feel optimistic that the commitments described in the Malabo Declaration will be reflected in the post-2015 goals, and that the global partnership necessary to achieve an end of extreme poverty and the end of hunger will come about.
Yes, I am optimistic. And I feel that the commitments of Malabo in the extension of what was done since 2003 are such that African countries today have committed themselves to mobilize more than 10% of their budget to agriculture. That is something that will come to fruition, and I believe, moreover, with the Ban Ki-moon initiative, the commitment of the United States government, President Obama, and the Global Alliance, thanks to that, we'll be able to mobilize great sums of money to create synergies that will enable us to pool the public actors, the private actors, civil society, NGOs. I think that we also have to have a global approach in that regard. We have to produce in Africa, but we have to transform as well, process and do business. So this global approach will enable us to add value to African agriculture. We have to modernize it to attract the young people, because traditional agriculture, such as we experience it in Africa, does not have a future and will not mobilize the young Africans. This global alliance, I am certain, will create a new perspective, and we're expecting a lot from this Washington summit to go in that direction. And I'm convinced that things are promising.
We end on an optimistic note. And I would note that the United States is committed to working with Africa to implement those commitments. Now, please join me in thanking the panel, and I welcome back to the stage Raj Shah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much to John and the panel. We recognize it's wonderful to end on that note, that innovative partnerships are what can help us be successful. To conclude, I just want to highlight that, as Secretary Vilsack was talking, we are in the National Academy of Science. And in the boardroom of this building is a painting of President Lincoln signing the Morrill Act in the middle of the Civil War, and thus creating the American land-grant university system, which helped transform American agriculture for the century that followed. So let's take inspiration from that. Together we can fight hunger and poverty through Feed the Future, embrace climate-smart agriculture, and build resilience, and do that in a focused, directed way. And we're going to show you a video now from the One campaign that proves that while doing this, we can also make all of this work cool, as Sifo points out, is one of the requirements of the task. I would ask that as we show this concluding video, if you would please remain in your seats until the official delegations have departed. That would be helpful for our logistics. Thank you very much for your partnership, participation, and together we can succeed.
jeunesse africaine qui tu vends nos terres. Maratana Congo, let's go together, plant the seeds of life forever. Let the earth provide for your children's a hunger never. So let us grow Africa. Make we join hands, build Africa. The time is now, the land is green. All that's left is you and me. I wanna be so, Pibe the water, picheche music is back.
Natamani ingejua kitambo kama ukulima ndiyo mpango, ningeshakuwa mbali, lakini afadhali mwana nimezinduka na anza isafari. Pata habari kilimo sasa ndio ujanja, cheki watu wanavyotoka maisha wanajenga. Sikia hii si ya bidii, lima na lipa, ongeza bidii kwenye kilimo sikuficha. Moyo wetu rengetu mahivi singa upi singa mbe. Lança semente na terra puxada na mão para o pinga nação, onde com homem coragem visa no futuro, onde o povo alcança a vibração. Munhara penso, coconut chocolate. We can dance, we can sing, we can plant, we can reap, we can feed the world. We're the most blessed, not the most cast. Success more than enough. Dignity, stability, tranquility. Africa, you feel me? I wanna be so. We can kill this poverty. What can you want? Do the best in a lot of things. We need to specialize. I won't go to Villa, I won't go plant cassava. I won't go to Villa, I won't go plant cocoyam. Oh yeah, come together, make Africa better. Oh no, do I beat you, mama? Nous avons la terre, il y a la pluie. Agnès Sénégal, Sénégal, هكذا نحن سنسير هكذا واحد زع واحد هكذا نحن سنسير هكذا